So, as we know, today's topic is about Asians in sport, but not just actually people who play it, but also people involved in regulating the sport and managing the sport and creating rules and laws in the sport. So, I'm very pleased to introduce now someone who I've known for a long time. We used to work together at one stage, and now she's a Lambardarni at the FA, as I like to call her. She's a director of the FA, and actually, she's the first Asian ever on the board of the FA, Rupinder Bains. So, Rupinder, welcome to the show. Sat Sri Akal.
Thank you.
Rupinder, as I described you in Punjabi as a Lambardarni, you're on the board of the FA. So, please tell us first of all what you do. ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਵਧਾਈਆਂ ਵੀ ਦੇ ਦਈਏ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ because you're the first Asian ever to be on the board of the FA, and that's one taboo that you've broken and one glass ceiling that you've broken. But people would not, and people would have expected an Asian male to be there, but as an Asian female, I think that's really worthy of praise. The ਬਾਕੀ ਹੁਣ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸੋ ਕਿ being a Lombardar at the FA, being on the board, what exactly do you do? So I'm just assuming like a lot of us now are looking in awe at the program and thinking, right, there's big chairs and big bundes sitting around big tables making big decisions. Is that what it's about?
Exactly what it's about, actually. There is a big table, and we do all sit around that big table. And we deal with very, very complicated and big issues, I have to say. Never did I think that I would be in that role, but the fact that I am, as an Asian and as a female, it puts a lot of responsibility on my shoulders. And it's really important for me personally to execute that responsibility in the best ways as I possibly can. And that means not just about advocating the needs and the gaps, the glaring gaps that exist for ethnic minorities and for women, but also for the issues that face football today. And that can range from, things like safeguarding all the way to inclusion and diversity issues and the rule making of the game. So it's a whole host of issues that we deal with.
What is the FA doing about diversity and inclusion? We hear these words bandied around a lot. And then we also hear other stuff such as, racism. And that sort of puts a lot of Asians and Asian parents off sending their kids into sport. But what are the FA doing in relation to that? And also within its own staffing stuff, how is it being representative of the diverse culture that we have in the UK?
Yeah, that's a really, really broad question. And you know what? I completely understand why people from ethnically diverse backgrounds have a hesitancy, a reservation towards joining sport, whether that's playing or whether that is, being involved in another professional capacity, because there's always some issue or another. It's like, well, they're never going to hire me. I've tried and I can't get in. It's all a, old boys network. And I understand that completely because, even joining the legal profession way back then, I faced some of that as well. So
Yeah.
it's not just in sport, it is in other areas, but it's really about how these issues are being tackled. And I have to say, in the 3 years that I've been at the FA, and I know prior to that, the FA has had a bit of a reputation as being maybe seen as being disconnected, a bit out of touch. And maybe there was reason for that. But in the last 3 years that I've been with the organisation, there has been a massive shift of wanting to change, of reviewing the organisation and what it stands for. What are its objectives? It's not just about the bottom line, it's not just about making money, it's about looking at football holistically. I mean, football is powerful, it's the nation sport. And, it's used in the right way, it can make some huge, massive changes. And that's what they're doing that internally within the organisation itself. They're looking at, our own makeup. The FA is not just, the FA. There are so many facets within the organisation. It's huge.
Right.
And they're taking it apart and reviewing the entire makeup and looking at things like, the ethnicity pay gap, the gender pay gap, gender involvement, ethnicity involvement, everything like that is being looked at. I mean, at board level, we are now 30% female on the board. We were 40,
Wow.
but we're now recruiting again for our senior independent director position on the board. it may be another female, in which case we're going to be four females. So, there is that's been a huge shift away from what it used to be, when I think around the board were, is the old male, pale, stale kind of presentation that the FA always had. But apart from internally, externally, the FA is doing a lot of work as well. And we've got the Asian inclusion plans, which are being advocated at the moment. And I believe one of my colleagues that you'll have on will talk more about that. But I'm part of the Asian Female National Advisory Group, which was set up about 2 years ago. And it's made up of 17 Asian women, some within the FA and some from outside of the FA, but involved in football anyway. And we come together to discuss what the issues are with regards to Asian women and getting them involved in football. Because using independent research, we found that the Asian community is probably the least active group in England. And Asian females make up a large percentage of that. So how can we get them engaged in football? Not as for health benefits in terms of playing, but also involvement at professional levels, to look at next leadership, female leadership potentials, role models, ambassadors for the game. So, we're trying to see what we can do there to engage them. So that's a big piece of work that's going on at the moment. And we're trying to get football ingrained in our little girls, so that they play it at their first opportunities at school, so that they get a taster for this. And we've got the Wildcat program, which is run out in primary schools now for age 5 to 11. And in fact, I know the Guru Nanak Gurdwara FC have got a girls team just from that Wildcat Cats initiative, and they now got that little team of girls playing in their local league. So it is happening. There are more and more girls and women getting involved, but we just need to encourage more, whether they want to play it on a social basis or whether they want to get involved in a professional capacity. There is now scope to do so. And possibly, I think the biggest thing that we introduced at the end of last year was the Leadership Equality Code, which I don't know if you're familiar with that, but basically that has been signed up to, that code has been signed up to now by a lot of the Premier League clubs, the EFL clubs, Women's Super League, Women's Championship clubs. And the code basically is about employment at senior levels. So senior levels in board levels, management levels, going down in coaching levels. So it's both on the pitch and off the pitch again, but the senior levels. And it's looking at how the clubs are recruiting. The clubs actually have to report back on an annual basis and look at what hires they've made. And, we're actually setting targets for meeting inclusion and diversity targets. So, the fact that they have to report back annually brings about a level of transparency. And with transparency comes accountability. And that's what makes the code so groundbreaking, because that's never been done before. Everybody has always had this impression that job positions were given in football to people It's a closed network. There's no way to penetrate that network. That's now changing. And I have to say, in my professional career, whether it's legal, whether it's in football, this is the first time that I have ever actually felt a real shift in momentum. I feel the need for people to want to change. And it begins at the senior levels, because there's no point having that, just in random places. You need that from the top, going right down the organisation. And we're really lucky because our senior levels at the FA, obviously we're recruiting for a new chair at the moment, but our CEO, Mark Bullingham, absolutely superb. He is such an advocate for diversity and inclusion. I mean, it's there at our board meetings all the time. We discuss the issues. We discuss where we're at. It's not just something that we don't take it on a reactionary basis. So when an incident takes place, then what are we going to do? It's a rolling agenda item, so that it's never too far from our minds, and we make sure that we're constantly addressing these issues.
Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us. And Sat Sri Akal. Then that was Rupinder Bains on the board of directors of the FA.